It's June 30th, 2019, and this is the live Tropical Weather Bulletin at this time. Alvin, 94E and 4W, also 94B, which isn't marked on this map for some reason. We're now up to 29 storms around the world so far in 2019. Nothing going on in the Atlantic at this time. It's day 30 of hurricane season here, and nothing on the horizon anytime soon. The Eastern Pacific has the remnants of Alvin and 94E staying at 90% chance at the 5 p.m. PDT update from the National Hurricane Center. 4W is a tropical storm in the Western Pacific, not too far from the Philippines. It's been given the local name Igay, and it's likely to continue towards the northwest. No systems active in the Southern Hemisphere at this time. I think this is the point where we switch over to the other thing. Okay, excellent. I'm just trying to fix some things because things went a bit crazy there because that bottom bar isn't up to date, but I'll get onto that in just a moment. There we go. Alright, this is the current one. We were using our last one there. It's been so hectic. I hope you enjoyed what we just saw there, the Astronomy Hour from Devon. It was a fascinating show. But now let's get on to what's going on in the world of storms in this hour, and we've got a whole hour to talk about it. I'm joined by the team, which consists of Ryan, Hank, and Max. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Great. Just trying to wonder why there isn't anything working there as well. Okay, the Central Pacific page wasn't working properly. Okay, this is satellite imagery of 4W on the screen right now, and I suppose, guys, this might be the one that we want to start talking about because it is the strongest system that's out there right now.
Yeah, sure. Right now it's pretty disheveled, but it's getting better organized. It's having some issues actually gaining organization, and by that I mean stacking the low-level center with anything in the mid-levels, which right now it is not doing. And when that happens, then you can't have a vertically rising column of air, which a tropical cyclone would need to flourish and generate more symmetric and organized convection, which not 94W, I'm sorry, 4W now is trying to do. Still doesn't have a name from the JMA. Kind of surprised that it hasn't done so yet, but that probably would be coming on the horizon given further strengthening. It actually has weakened a little bit today. ATCF had it at 40 knots at the 12Z advisory, and then they brought it down to 40 miles an hour.
That's that's the second time they've done that today, actually.
When I don't know when that other time would have happened, but because it went to 40 knots at 12Z and then down to 35 knots right after the 18Z advisory. But this thing is not particularly well organized anyway you slice it, but it's probably getting there. It's going to be tough because some of the models have been kind of iffy on this system, particularly the global dynamical models have not been picking it up very well, trying to merge it with the monsoonal system over the South China Sea. The only models that are really picking it up right now are the H-Wharf and some of the other, I guess, regional models that have been trying to pick it up. But apart from that, and even then, it's not ridiculously strong. If anything, I think the H-Wharf has a minimal hurricane or typhoon, I guess, and that would be the maximum strength that it would get to on the models, if you go by dynamical models, that is. So. Yeah, right. It's not looking like this will be a significant typhoon or anything.
Just try and grab some of those. Well, first of all, actually, let's take a look at the JTWC track for Tropical Storm 4. I think this one is up to date. The 9 p.m. track eclipsed the southern tip of Taiwan, according to them. Maximum wind speeds of 65 miles an hour. We were surprised when they put out their first map, some of us, when they were going with 70 miles per hour because the models didn't really support that. What are they looking at? Because the GFS, at least, which usually holds a lot of weight, isn't really buying it at all. And then there's the other issue of that potential feeding of another storm in the South China Sea that could occur.
Yeah, that's that monsoonal system I was referring to that's absorbing some of the energy, at least on the model from 4W. And it's possible that something like that may actually occur, and I think that's kind of the reasoning behind why this track is farther towards the south than it was initially. Initially, it was kind of further north to the north of Taiwan. Now it's kind of shifted farther to the south, and a little weaker as well. Yeah, neither the GFS or the European are developing this in any way, let alone bring it in towards Taiwan as a strong tropical storm. The only model that really supports that solution as of right now is the HWR or the HWRF, whatever you want to call it. And even that's starting to back off more because the most recent run is barely showing anything, in fact.
I think there was also the COTC that has borderline Typhoon, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't pay attention to that model, so I wouldn't know for sure.
That's related to the Navy, though, isn't it? So JTWC might be thinking about that one.
Possible.
All right, there's also the Pagasa's Track Map as well, which I think has it ever so slightly further north, but really not much difference. Depression all the way through, according to them. As you can see, they've named it. Igay is the latest name from the Philippines. And I don't think they're going to be issuing any warnings at all for the Philippines from this.
No, it looks like it's going to be passing to the north of Luzon.
So that's another view, and this is some of the computer models there. You can see some of the more familiar faces, CMC taking it further north. Do we ever believe that with anything, even when it comes to track forecast for an existing cyclone?
I mean, it's okay. It has an okay track record. It's just terrible with Genesis because it overdoes it all the time. But I think that the CMC is also kind of a little later and a little weaker on that monsoonal system in the South China Sea. So that's one of the reasons why it's a bit farther towards the north on this, because it's not feeling any southward pull from that. But apart from that, it's also very weak on that run. It's just 999 millibars at most, and that would be happening tonight, if anything. So it's going to be a little bit of a rough road for that.
Interesting. Here's another look at one of the other systems, Invest 94E. One or two raised eyebrows that maybe they didn't increase the percentages to near 100% and kept it at 90. Am I getting that from any of you?
Well, here's the thing, though. I think that it's just, there's not enough certainty to know that it's, like, forming immediately, because they usually only go with 100% if it's, like, going to form at the next advisory, which it doesn't look like it. Well, it might do that. I think it has a really good chance, but I don't think they have enough evidence to support that it's, like, imminent, that it's currently forming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let me pull up screen share and see if I can get this running right now.
I'm trying to get some imagery here myself. Let's go back to some imagery that we did acquire from earlier of 94E. I was hoping it would animate. Okay, maybe not. Well, there is a still image of 94E.
Only really a small burst of convection might be enough to grant it tropical depression status.
Well, it's on the verge of that, and I have imagery up on my screen share
I've got
now,
it now,
so I can. Okay. So this is basically the system right now. I'm using this drawing tool that I adore. So this is the system right now. You can see it's still pretty broad. In fact, it's huge right now. I mean, the convective envelope is about the size of mainland Mexico, just for some semblance
to
right
Alvin,
now.
it is huge.
Yeah, Alvin, by the way.
It is a
dead swirly right here. Moving off towards the northwest and
Careful.
is dead. Don't worry about it anymore. Okay. So 94E, this is the system right now, and you can see it's pretty big, and as a result, it's having some trouble kind of organizing any potential convection. I was looking at some of these frames earlier, and there's quite a bit of southerly flow right on the east side of this big convective tower right here, as well as a lot of northwesterly flow right over here on the northwest side. So as a result, what I think is happening is that there is a closed low that has developed in here, issues that it might not be tight enough to actually be warranting of a tropical depression I guess, upgrade. So it's going to be, it's really close, but it's just not quite there. It's going to get there. Essentially, we can basically call it. It's going to get there at some point. But it's going to take just a little bit more time for that to happen. And you can see even here, there's a little bit of a convective tower forming over that, so that might help to just kind of wound up the circulation a little bit more, so it can come tight enough to become a depression. You can already see there's very well-defined outflow right here. Dual outflow channels, that's pretty well established right here. It's still kind of embedded within the intertropical convergence zone right here, but it's kind of shaped in a form like this right here. So it's not particularly no, what happened there? So it's not quite broken off from that just yet. Let me refresh this. I'm just like, okay. All right, now I'm getting the wheel of death. All right, that's brilliant.
Oh dear.
Let's see. This will work. Anyways, what's happening right now is that it's still embedded within the intertropical convergence zone. And why are you popping up, Adobe? Go away. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of technical difficulties on my end, but so it's still embedded within it. But right now, it's getting very close to breaking off from the rest of the intertropical convergence zone. There we go. So you could. So let me just kind of give a little visualization right here. So right here, this is where the kind of flow is generally located. Let me see if I can redraw that real quickly here. Let's see, there we go. See right there. So that would be the general flow of the intertropical convergence zone. You can notice here that the low would be right in here, and you can see all this flow in here. All this northwesterly flow right in here is going to be pushing in to this little kink right here, and as a result, this is also going to be mounting up a little more as winds increase on this side. So what's going to happen is this is going to continue being pushed back as the winds increase here, and once these two lines intersect here, once this crosses that means the wave axis is broken and that there is a closed low here, and it will become a bona fide tropical cyclone, and then we'll continue to move off towards the northwest under the influence of the subtropical ridge, and basically leave the intertropical convergence zone entirely and become its own.
Yeah, definitely. What models have been saying for a while, some of them, is that it will be a long-lived storm, which is pretty rare at this early point of the season.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Seems most likely that it would be because there's nothing steering it farther towards the north to move into the anomalously cool waters off the coast of Mexico. But there's nothing that's going to be steering it towards the north into the North Pacific that would just kill it off anyway. So it's looking like it's going to stay pretty far to the south because if you note on Imagery, it's already really far south now. Usually storms during June are close to where Alvin was. It's usually right off the coast of Mexico. This is about halfway between that and the equator. So this is pretty far south for a storm this early into the year. So this is going to remain pretty far south throughout its whole life, and even long-range models bring it pretty close to the Hawaiian Islands. There's no like certainty on what the impacts will be to Hawaii. It may just be rough surf. That's the most likely solution. I wouldn't be overly concerned about it just yet, because it is, one, a long ways out, and two, the potential impacts are very uncertain because models just have no real clue to do what to do with it right there. So, I mean, this right here, this is already 10 days out. I shouldn't even be showing you that. So it's going to be a long time before it would have some impact to Hawaii. And even some of the models don't even have it surviving that far. In fact, the GFS kills it before it gets to that longitude. So it's going to be interesting to see
That's
how
what
the
it's doing
evolves,
now.
but it's pretty certain.
A day or two ago, the GFS had it getting to 175 west.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But what's pretty certain is that this will become a powerful hurricane of some sort, probably the first major hurricane of the season. I wouldn't doubt it.
Could be.
Yeah.
And then the storm, there's another storm behind it, which is also marked on the 5-day outlook. I think it 30%.
I saw this earlier today.
30%.
Earlier today, Hank, GFS and ECMWF actually hinting at a couplet of storms here.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Is there anything on this convective-looking area that seems to be pretty much on the borderline between the East and Central Pacific?
Sorry, say that one more time.
I don't know. Is there anything on this convective-looking area that seems to be on the borderline between the East and Central Pacific?
Yes, I did see that there was a little bit of support for that developing on the longer range. I think that the models have since dropped, but the Euro does form some sort of a strong disturbance. That's not actually a depression, but at least a decent looking system for, I guess, early July. So, the main issue with that is that there's very strong shear over that. There's a pretty strong trough that's over the Central Pacific right now. It's kind of on the edge of the screen right here. And then it's kind of cutting across all this convection right here, so nothing is really able to get well organized right here. Well, as the case with 94E, the upper level winds here are very light, so it's not really an issue. And then afterwards, yeah, that couple of the storms that Nathan hinted to, it's possible that we may see something like that, but that would be in the long range. And it wouldn't be, none of these storms would be really affect to land, but it does appear that the second storm would be at a bit higher of a latitude than 94E, which, if it were to gain a name, it would gain the name Barbara, which is pretty likely to happen at this stage, just based on all the support. But you can see at the end of the European there's a little bit of somewhat of a Fujiwara going on between those two storms, but it's kind of far apart, so it's really a Fujiwara. It's just kind of two mutual storms that aren't really close enough to actually do a binary interaction of.
All right, we're going to get some more imagery up shortly. If you like, what am I saying next? I was in the Super Cyclone Challenge mode then for some reason. If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air tonight, please send us a message on the chat section. We're watching it closely. Tag Force13, start your message with us, and it will draw attention. We're now looking at the Western Pacific.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at this one right here, and it appears that there's increasing model consensus that this monsoonal system that I was mentioning would interact with 4W, may become a tropical cyclone in its own right. See right there in the HWRF right here, that's just on the coast of Hainan right there. That's probably, it could be a minimal typhoon right there, and then moving farther into the Gulf of Tonkin, and then making landfall around the Vietnam-China border by Thursday. GFS, I think, has a similar solution, but weaker with that, because it's just a very broad system, so it's tough to say. But it does have some sort of a tropical cyclone making landfall closer towards Hong Kong and Macau, as opposed to Hainan. I think the European is closer. Yeah, Europeans is more aligned with the H4 solution into the Gulf of Tonkin, and then making landfall in extreme northern Vietnam by the time we get to the middle of next week. And doing absolutely nothing with 4W.
Well, here we are. Latest satellite imagery of 4W looks like this. You can see that, well, both of those systems, you could call them, the one in the South China Sea as well, either side of the Philippines, producing significant amounts of convection. 4W is a lot more organized, and it's interesting to see what exactly will play out as we watch this. But as day breaks, 4W blowing up quite a lot. It's got a bit of a weird structure, though.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning at the beginning of the stream, where it was kind of in a very decoupled state, that because those two surface center and the mid-level center aren't vertically stacked, there isn't enough energy to concentrate to the point where you would have just a singular area of convection that would be pulsating up and down, and then would have, like, be gaining symmetry and all that fun stuff. It's just not in that state right now, so it's having two kind of distinct areas of convection, one in the northern quadrant, one, a larger one in the southern quadrant, and that's just kind of the result of that misalignment right there.
I'm also looking here at Invest 94E here. There it is. Anything that we can deduce in addition to what you've been saying already from this imagery? Is it a closed low?
It appears so. It just doesn't look like it's tight enough to warrant a tropical depression upgrade.
Interesting. Whilst we look at this imagery, we've got some early questions in here. Do you think that 4W may become a typhoon?
It's got a
straight
shot,
to it,
I'd
then.
definitely say. Definitely has a
I would
shot,
say the-
but I don't
would say
know.
the opposite, actually.
Oh,
You'd
yeah.
say what, sorry?
Yeah,
I
I
would
don't
say
think
quite the
so, though.
opposite.
The opposite.
I
I
don't
would
think
say-
that it's going to happen.
I would say that it's probably not going to get much stronger than it is now, in all honesty.
Certainly
Yeah,
blowing up
I mean,
those
most of the
cloud tops.
models have backed off on it becoming a typhoon. Most of them just have it staying as a tropical storm, so I think it's just going to, stay as a tropical storm.
Has a
Yeah, upper
hurricane
level
ever
winds are
messed?
terrible.
Has a hurricane ever messed with California? Is another question we've getting
I
here.
said,
It's not going to be any of these.
1850.
Yeah, but it depends on what you mean by messed with California, though.
Max, were you saying something there?
And I was saying, like, in terms of any kind of direct impacts, really only in 1858 and 1939. Mess with California, I don't know, you might be able to say something like Linda of 97 having that one cone that apparently went to California at one point.
All right. And whoever's managing Force 13 US tonight, I don't know who that is. I'm guessing it maybe Tim. Says that the US team is keeping an eye on the severe weather over there tonight. So Force 13 US is our one of our regional channels. We also relaunched Force 13 UK and Ireland properly recently as well. So if anyone is in my neck of the woods, that might also interest you on separate YouTube accounts and whatnot. Let's see. Do you think a new invest will sprout from the disturbance in the East Pac? Well, which one?
I'm assuming he's referring to the area of investigation
gotta.
behind 94. And just,
I-
I guess, just based on model guidance, it's pretty likely that it
Yeah,
would
it's
gain
pretty
an
likely.
investigation soon. At least once the incipient disturbance forms. Yes, it still has the 30% chance development in 5 days, whereas 94E has a 90% chance. It's pretty much, it's higher than that in all honesty, but it's given a 90% chance on the tropical weather outlook given by the NHC.
Absolutely. Okay. So there is the situation from the National Hurricane Center. That's the 2-day outlook. So you can see just another perspective there on just how large Invest 94E is. And what we do see with large systems is they sometimes struggle to intensify. Do you think we'll be seeing that problem?
It's tough to say because a lot of this convection is just there because it is still within the intertropical convergence zone. Once it does break off of that, then a lot of that convective mass will dissipate. So it's going to maybe struggle for the first few couple days of its life. But then after, I'd say Monday, Tuesday, probably Tuesday, that's when it will probably start to strengthen with a lot more earnest. Model guidance is kind of agreeing with that. The HWRF in particular wasn't very excited about immediate development. In fact, in the model run itself, I believe it only gets it up to a minimal hurricane by the end of the run. I take that back. The most recent run actually takes it up to Cat 2 and then levels it off after Wednesday. So and it doesn't start really intensifying it until Monday, Tuesday, because it's still kind of broad and just kind of has a little time to take to actually converge more of that energy and start to develop more of a bona fide core, it appears, is what the model is suggesting on this. Even has a few smaller circulation centers apart from the dominant one that are forming at the beginning. So it may take a little while for this to really get going, but once we get towards, I'd say, the middle of next week, it'll probably start getting a lot of steam.
Something that we might also want to just bring up here, because something you posted remind me of that, Hank. a contentious issue that happened in the last few days regarding Sepat.
Oh,
Anyone's thoughts on
Regarding
that
it.
right now?
Regarding its tropicality.
We obviously, I think people know that we didn't give it tropical storm status because the only reason why it had the wind speeds, I think it probably had the tropicality, or at least subtropicality. It didn't have a circulation.
At the surface?
Well,
From what we saw. What do you think?
What do you mean we?
Well, from what ASCAT was putting out, never saw a center of circulation.
Huh.
yeah, it really did look very disorganized, and I'm not sure if I would even call it a cyclone of any sort. It didn't have like a.
That's what
clear
makes a tropical
center.
cyclone, and in the
Yeah, that's what makes it.
in the
Exactly.
scientific definition, not necessarily saying that it's a wrong thing to name the storm, but under the current conventions, it is.
Yeah, and it was really a.
Jaguar situation.
Say again?
Okay, that was
Jaguar was a
worse.
front.
Jaguar.
Was a front. It was not a cyclone whatsoever. At least Pat had cyclonic characteristics. Jaguar did not.
And was, I think, basically just a with a little swirly about it or something.
All right, we're looking at that satellite imagery again from, is this Go 17?
Oh, you're asking me?
Looks like it.
And if you are, then yes, it is. Just kind of getting a different perspective on it, I guess.
And you can just about see Alvin there as well. God, that one really capitulated very quickly.
Yep, considering it was a hurricane 48 hours ago, I think it was. Now it's kind of, sort of, gone.
So there's some
It's just
rapid
like a-
dissipation.
Yeah.
I wonder if anyone wants to give a mention to Invest 94B as well in the Indian
Oh,
Ocean.
yeah, that thing.
It does exist.
Sure.
That-
We just
that's a
talked
thing.
about it.
That's a
Yeah,
thing.
that's a thing. That's a
Oh,
thing, yes.
okay.
Here
I don't
it
know
is
anything about it.
on the screen right now. Even neglected to put it in the opening titles today. Well, there is Invest 94B blowing up some convection just off the coast of India, not far from the border with Bangladesh. What's there to
so it's
say
one of
about
these
it?
systems.
One of these systems.
It's one of those systems.
Okay.
One of those
Let's,
monsoonal garbage systems.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely looks like garbage. What is that? Is that just... That's not... Excuse me.
So we've not looked at
Okay.
anything to do with this, I take it. We don't know whether...
Yep.
I don't know. I'd say maybe the best we could get out of this might be, in most extreme case, land depression.
Land depression.
Land of... Well, one of their...
That's actually a terminology
I
that the
know.
IMD uses sometimes.
Yeah, land depression when a tropical depression forms on land. That's basically what it is.
Could we have a quick look at those models and see if it develops anything out of this? Last I saw, it doesn't.
Let's see here. Let's have a look here
Hank's
and
just
see if
going
I can find
furiously
something.
trying to find the Indian Ocean basin.
Uh,
Well, there it is.
and it's just a very broad
Huge.
disturbance.
Makes me wonder why they...
Alright.
Oh, well, and again.
Though Euro
Maybe-
does have a little bit
That
more
is interesting.
concentrated energy as it makes landfall. I don't know where that is in India. I don't know my Indian geography. It looks like it's close to Calcutta.
Yeah, not too
So-
far away at all.
Yeah, so looks like that it was found an actual. It may be depression on that run, but it's not like anything that's out of the ordinary for this region during this time of year. So I wouldn't. I mean, it's going to be a huge rainmaker. That's going to be obviously the biggest concern, as is with any of these monsoonal type systems. But development seems I guess just based off the fact that I learned about it 2 minutes ago, unlikely.
All right, 1:30. Let's do a recap on what's going on around the world right now on this live tropical weather bulletin. So this, first of all, is a look at the different areas of the world. The North Atlantic on the top left-hand panel there. Not displaying too much at this time. Little area flaring up off the Yucatan Peninsula, but models are pretty damn sure, even the CMC, that nothing will develop in at least the next 10 days. The Indian Ocean on the bottom left there, looking pretty quiet. Some interesting little flare-ups in the southwest Indian Ocean. And also you've got, of course, 94B and is 94, I think. And in the Western Pacific there, quite obviously 4W. There is a close-up image of Tropical Storm 4W. Visible imagery now over the system. And you can quite clearly see that decoupling there. And it's getting more pronounced by the hour, Hank.
Yeah. I'm starting just looking at this thing. It's not looking like it's going to be able to organize much at all. There's also quite a bit of monsoonal shear in the areas, really hindering this thing from developing. In fact, that's what's really causing this with height is all this northeasterly flow over this region, just funneling into that developing monsoonal system over the South China Sea. So anything that really tries to get going here is going to have a really tough time strengthening.
Yep, this is Invest 94B again, so we'll move on from that. 94E, we had better imagery elsewhere. We'll come back to that in a little while. There's another alternative picture of 4W, and you can see the cloud tops, for its credit. It's managing -80 in both couplings, as it were. The southerly burst is way below -80 Celsius. And this is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center track map for 4W. They're pretty keen on it becoming a significant tropical storm not too far from typhoon status, 65 miles per hour as it clips the southern tip of Taiwan and then moves on into China near the same intensity. So that could still pack a punch if that was to transpire, but at the moment, not looking too much like that's going to happen. The Pagasa Track Map looks very much the same. As far as I know, they still haven't put out any warnings to speak of just yet. Again, looking at those models there, spreading anywhere from Hong Kong, which has a 14% chance of tropical storm conditions at the moment, to Japan. I doubt the latter. The former is somewhat unlikely. China is much more likely via Taiwan, or at least clipping Taiwan. And then there's also Invest 94E, and the models get much more spaced out towards the end there, but in general, they are all headed towards Hawaii.
At varying intensities, yes.
At varying intensities. Just a reminder of the Atlantic, nothing expected. The East Pac, 90% on Invest 94E now. That's been the case for a little while. The Central Pacific one is not loading for me at the moment for some reason, and there's a look at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center area, just 4W. That is pretty much the top and bottom of it. If you've got any comments or questions for us right now, you can send a message to us via the chat feature on the live stream. Alright, where do we go next? Let's go back to some of the imagery of 94E, which we're watching very closely for potentially becoming our next tropical cyclone. There it is, and that's how it has been looking throughout today. Is the convection becoming deeper in the latest frame?
Deeper, I can check on that real quick. I just have the visible imagery loaded up and check IR. Let's see. Like, if you look at IR, then it definitely looks like a lot more compact than as if you were to look at visible imagery, because visible imagery also counts not just the higher convective tops. It takes into account everything, so it looks like there's a lot more mass to it on visible than if you were to look at infrared. But infrared, you could see it's still pretty compact, but it's still pretty, and that's going to be the issue.
It's got eyes right now.
going on?
It's got eyes
It's got
right
eyes. Not the type
Pair
of
of
eye you'd
eyes.
expect, though.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can see what you're talking about. It's just the two convective towers around, or I guess the left one is where the closed circulation. Actually, it's one of the two. Is where the closed circulation is likely located right now. I'm looking at infrared. It's tough to really decipher, but I believe.
Right.
Let me just.
Some people are really bringing down their expectations. We've got a question here. Is anything expected in the Atlantic this summer?
Yes. You just have to wait a bit. Wait for like a month or two, and something will form.
I've seen some comments going along the tone of, there's nothing going to happen in the Atlantic this year. Already, we're only at the end of June.
I mean,
Well,
I would wait
June's-
till the second half of July when this whole MJO pulse that's basically centered over the Westpac. In fact, you can just pull this graphic up really quickly here. This is the MJO forecast right now. This is right now, and you can see that all the rising motion is based over the Eastern Pacific, hence why there's been so much activity recently. That, and coupled with convectively coupled Kelvin wave, it's meteorology terminology that y'all don't care about, so I won't talk about
I
it.
just want to remind everyone that the long-term average for the first named storm happening in the Atlantic is July the 9th. We've already had
and
one.
yeah.
Well, not really.
Okay.
Andrea doesn't count.
And the second one is August the 1st, so we got a long time to wait.
Yeah, I
That's
thought
on
that
average.
I think that like the second named storm on average forms in like late July, so it might actually be an early second storm based on average. On the averages, that is.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Alright,
this
Hank,
is
go.
the. Sorry, that was my fault.
No, I really wanted to bring home that climatological point there, but you go ahead now.
No, I'm talking about interrupting you.
No.
So yeah, this is the MJO pulse right now. You can see that there's a lot of upward motion over the Eastern Pacific right now, which is why there's a lot of that's the base reason why there's a lot of cyclone activity right now. There's more to it, but they're techie and annoying. So, and then you can see it slowly progresses towards the east. Now you see it does weaken in velocity, but that's also because forecast certainty goes down. So it's a lot tougher to actually decipher if it's going to be as strong as it enters the Atlantic. It'll start entering the Atlantic, as in the main area of the Atlantic, within the second half of July. And that's likely when we'll start seeing storm activity really ramp up again. Because the Atlantic right now is in a transitional phase. It's very much scarily akin, actually, to a year that some of y'all may know because of how infamous it is, 2004. A year that had no activity in June, no activity in July. August and September was off to the races, and and it was a pretty bad year, to say the least. I think that this year may be quite similar to that in many regards. I mean, just the configurations for both the Enzo and the Atlantic itself are strikingly similar. But I digress. Basically,
so just to confirm, Hank, it's the blue
what-
areas on this screen that are favourable, right?
Yes, the blue areas are favorable. The yellow, orange, red, that's where air is sinking and where it is unfavorable.
In which case,
that's
why aren't we seeing things popping up in the Western Atlantic already? You know, the Gulf, the westernmost Caribbean, because they're already in the blue zone there.
It does. It takes usually some time for all this to kind of settle in. Usually, the phasing is convectively active on the backside of this. This is just where the vertical ascent is mostly concentrated. And if you look at the Gulf of Mexico, there's quite a bit of convective activity going on, at least within the barriers of the Gulf. I mean, there's quite a bit going on over here in Texas right now, and that, in some sense, associated with the MJO being in a increasingly optimal phase. But in addition, as all this progresses towards the west, then that's going to become where it's kind of centered just to the east of the main area where we're expecting this East Pacific outbreak to happen, that's when it's going to be likely when we're going to have the most named storms when it's just based off towards the east, because that's when it's most convectively favored. But then you can see this area behind it in the Central Pacific progresses towards the east. All this stuff progresses eastwards, by the way. And then it will move into this area, so we may have a down phase again of Eastern Pacific, but then come August, it may go up again. And in the Atlantic's case, it may go way up. So this is something that it's kind of a wait and see type of thing. But right now, I'm really getting scary vibes for the Atlantic right now. And
Damn.
It's not saying that it's for certain. It's just how I'm observing this. If I can get my words across correctly, that's just what I'm observing. But as of now, it appears that it's just going to be the Eastern Pacific show for the first half of July, and then maybe the Atlantic towards the second half. And by the show, I don't mean we're going to have an outbreak of storms or anything like that. We're not going to see long track Cape Verde hurricanes, like any of that. We're not going to see. It's just maybe just an uptick in activity, maybe some homegrown storms in the Gulf or Caribbean or the Western Gulf, maybe an MDR storm, possible.
Yeah.
Just kind of your standard July stuff. Nothing like, we're not going to see Irmas and Florences pop up all of a sudden. So during July, I wouldn't bank on that.
Well, that's the first thing some people will be thinking about. Okay, let's take some more questions here. 94E is still elongated, but getting organized, says Justin. Can everyone here say what they think 94E will peak as?
I'd say currently, I'm gonna go with maybe a high-end Cat 2. I'm thinking, but I think major hurricane status is actually a decent possibility.
Yeah. I'm going with at least Cat 3, maybe Cat 4, possibly. Depends on how quickly this thing can get its act together and how long it progresses into the Western, or not the Western Pacific. Oh, Lord, don't maybe say that. The Central Pacific.
It could get to the West.
It's not going to go all the way to the West.
It could do.
It could. No.
I want a Hector. No more, please.
Do you think that 94E has a chance of becoming a hurricane in the next 5 days? I reckon so.
Yes.
Very likely.
Was Sepata Typhoon? We're getting these questions again.
No,
we did mention
it was
that.
not.
Another comment that came in earlier, the Euro was separating 94E into two systems. One towards Baja and one towards Hawaii. I don't remember seeing anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that's not. I'm not saying that right now. Yeah, I don't know what that's. Yeah, that's not. At least that's not the case.
Why are? Hold on a minute. Oh, this is an interesting question actually, which I'm not sure we'll be able to answer. But why are invests like 94B have near zero development chances, but in the East Pacific it can take up to 60% before they get called an invest?
I don't know.
Because everything that JTWC tags as a low chance is given an invest designation. For the Atlantic and the East, anything in the NHC AOR usually takes about a moderate chance for them to get some sort of invest designation. At least that's what I've observed.
Will 2000
always the case.
Will 2019
Well, not always, but that's usually the case.
Yeah.
Will 2019 be like 2018 in the Eastern Pacific?
No.
I don't think so. No, 2018 was almost record activity in the East Pac. It was
record high ace that year, so
record high ace, yeah, and almost I think was it tied the record for the most amount of majors? Am I correct on that?
No, 2015 had 11, and 2018 had 10.
At 10. Oh, tied for the most amount of Cat 4s is what I'm thinking of. Most amount of Cat 4s and a Cat 5s.
I think it had the most amount of Cat 4s.
It might have.
That would not surprise me.
2015 was close, though. Yeah, but it was almost...
Tied with 1994 and 2 for Cat 5s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's that, too. So 2018 was an extremely active year in the East Pac. I do not think that this year will be... I mean, we could see, an active season, but it's not going to be crazy active like last year was.
Looks like this Eastern Pacific season may end up more like 2017, because that year had a pretty big outbreak in July. Not as big as
July.
the year previous, but still a pretty significant train of storms that happened in July, and then kind of a downturn in August, and then August, September were kind of down phase while the Atlantic was doing its thing.
Well, of course, we all know about that.
But also, I mean, I guess 2017 isn't too bad of an analog. Don't go home with that and say the exact same thing that happened. The exact same things that happened in 2017 are going to happen this year, because they won't. But it's another really decent analog that I've observed. That and 2004 are probably the two best ones we have. Not just based off the Atlantic side, but also the Pacific and even the Indian Ocean in some aspects, though that's not as influential.
Even like 2000, we do see the start of the Doki El Nino, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's kind of transitioning away from that. It's more of like just the warm pole is centered in the Westpac, and there's more of actually the Nino 3.4 region is actually below normal right now, slightly, but it is It went from El Nino state to cool bias neutral. So that's just the Nino 3.4, and then the area where the warmest anomalies are is based west of that in the Central Pacific. So that's kind of more akin to 2004, though not as aggressive. But the AMO stay as well in the Atlantic is similar to both years, 2004 and 2017. Not quite as vigorous as 2017, but and by that I mean how warm the main development region was in 2017. Not as warm as it was that year, mainly because there's a lot of cooling going on near and south of Africa because of all the West African monsoon oceanic heat energy input, but also because all the warmer water is slightly based a little bit to the north, but as the state of the NAO changes, the North Atlantic Oscillation, some of those warmer anomalies will likely continue to shift farther to the south. Basically, all of the anomalies will kind of shift southward. So the cooler anomalies will be more closer towards the subtropical Atlantic, not just south of maritime Canada, but kind of shift farther towards the south, as well as kind of the horseshoe ring that's typical of your AMO pattern. That will shift south. So the warmest anomalies will more than likely be centered in the main development region, and that is what's concerning regarding hurricane activity coming up during August, September, and maybe October as well. Last year, this time, the main development region was rather cold, and we just had that random spur of Beryl and Chris in July because of the convectively coupled Kelvin wave passage, and that was it for the summer. And then once the MDR warmed up in late August and the MJO came into configuration, that's when the Atlantic started to light up more, and September was the month that year as opposed to August, which was one of the least active in history. Or at least in 2018, it was one of the least active in history for August.
All right, back to Tropical Storm 4W. If you've just joined us, the JTWC are expecting it to track towards the northwest. It's the headline tonight, and most agencies expect it to strike the southern tip of Taiwan before moving on to China as a significant tropical storm. We're casting a little bit of doubt over that at the minute based on its current appearance, but that's how they see it right now. And one or two models in agreement, but really not that many. A complex situation, you could say, because as we look back at the satellite imagery now, you can see that other little system to the west of it on the other side of the Philippines, which could be in competition. And some models, which models in particular was it, Hank, that predicted that system to really develop?
It was the Euro, the HWRF, and the GFS to a lesser extent.
Well, that's pretty good company between the three of them there. HWRF, our Model of the Year 2017, if we ever gave out awards. And the ECMWF is always up there as well, so interesting how both of those are calling for that. And there they are together right now.
Yeah, right now HWRF brings at least a minimal typhoon in the Hainan and then into the Gulf of Tonkin. the centering just changes because this is supposed to be centered over 4W, and apparently this trough picks it up on this run, so it off centers it. We can see it on the bottom left corner here of the screen.
Are we able to
see it moves in the Gulf of Tonkin here, right on this run.
And how strong is it?
That appears to be a minimal typhoon. Let me put the winds on the
It's gotta be good.
right there. Wow, I was way overdoing it.
Oh,
That's a
Okay.
strong tropical storm on there, and then weaker even. It's just the low center is so deep because it's so big. All right. I just pressed the wrong button.
interesting.
See the European. That's the United States. I don't want the United States right
A
now.
question just came in whilst you're doing that. Do you think 94E could become a PTC?
No, it's not impacting land, so no.
Yeah, that's the answer I was waiting for you to say, really. It just doesn't happen, really, in the Eastern Pacific. Has it happened yet?
I think the 2017 one of the storms was a PTC. I think it was a Lydia.
I think they did do it once. Just once.
I don't know. I wasn't paying too much attention to Lydia because Harvey was happening at the same time. That was knocking on my door, so I wasn't paying too much attention. But there might have been another storm that did it in 2017. I just don't know. Max, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe one. I
Don't look at me. I've not got a clue.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, looking back at this.
Okay, yeah. So this is the European model. You can see still pretty big right here over the northern and South China Sea, and then moves across Hainan into the Gulf of Tonkin, makes landfall in extreme northern Vietnam by Wednesday, so about 4 or 5 days out, and then moves inland and dissipates. The GFS, on the other hand, is weaker and more broad at the same time. A little bit of convective feedback erroring happened here, but it appears that the main low center would move closer towards Macau and Hong Kong earlier on, maybe closer towards Tuesday or Wednesday, or I guess it'd be Wednesday at that time in this part of the world. So it's Wednesday.
It's already Sunday.
What appears to be a tropical storm. So, and then that would move basically along the shore until it gets further into Indochina, where it will eventually dissipate. Other models that no one cares about, say things, CMC, yeah, similar thing. It obviously develops it, but it at least has good agreement with the remainder of the models. So, and then NavGem, terrible model, don't care. So, you should hear me talk to myself when I do this sort of stuff. I just talk trash about these models, and it's kind of funny. I should probably record myself doing these sometimes.
Well, that'll be the blooper reel for 2019 sorted out then.
Oh no, it could make up the whole blooper reel if you wanted it to. But I hate the sound of my own voice, so I would hate that to happen. So yeah.
All right, we've looked through all of those, I guess. Let's see if we can get another view for the Philippine region here of those two systems. Just about to get there now. Yeah, here's another one. So you can see, we speed this up here to an acceptable speed. Actually, in those latest frames there, it appears that the convection is waning in 4W.
Latest frames. Let's see. I see it on the stream. Yeah. Looks like it to me too.
Well, that can't be good.
No, it's not.
And
Nothing
on the
forming
left-hand
atop the surface center
side,
either.
that other thing is maintaining generally, but it's got no shape to it, has it?
No, it's just a broad monsoonal system as of now.
As far as effects on land, parts of Samar might see a little bit of significant rainfall there. Catanduanes might get some inclement conditions very soon later today, and the southeastern part of Luzon. But for the Philippines, doesn't look like there's going to be particularly big impacts at this point.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. Yeah.
All right, Ryan, Max, any thoughts? Because we're just about to wind up here.
Not really.
Not really.
Ah, Well, that leaves us in a pickle for 5 minutes. Well, if you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we wait for the end of the show.
Ooh, let's read out some questions here.
Alright, there are some questions, yeah.
Go back.
In the
Let's read
Atlantic,
some questions.
do you think that there could be a storm like Sandy and make landfall in the northeast?
Who knows?
I
Who
mean,
knows?
who knows?
Do you think
That's good of an answer I'm going to give you.
Do you think the system on the west side of the tagged as it?
On the west side of the Philippines? Well, not yet, but it might be down the road. I think it will be. Question there, is there a core forming in 4W? Not so
Nope.
sure about that.
Yeah. Oh, here's a classic question here. When will Barry form?
We've been waiting a long time. That is going to be the question of the year, I imagine. We're probably going to be waiting longer for Barry than we are for any other storm in the Atlantic this season.
Yeah, probably the biggest gap will be between... Yeah, I think this is going to be the biggest lull between storms in the Atlantic this season.
More than likely, I would say, yeah. Well, maybe, well, you could arguably say that we haven't seen any storms, but, well, tropical storms, I should say. So we haven't seen any tropical activity this year. Whatever Andrea was, and that's it.
Well, Andrea was a subtropical storm for like 18 hours and then it died.
I know, I'm just joking around about that.
The other
So-
being a hyperactive comeback in Atlantic like 2010.
A hyperactive
2000.
comeback in the Atlantic like in 2010. Okay.
What? Okay.
Well, I certainly don't think the Atlantic quite as crazy this 2010. Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. We're looking at latest imagery, just to say it's starting to get dark now over Invest 94E, so light fading. And I must say, Hank, I'm getting quite convinced that the eastern blob of convection is going to be the center of circulation here. Don't know what you think. Or anyone else, for that matter, as we look at it on the screen. Not sure whether it would make a huge amount of difference, but that's where we're at. It's way out at sea, won't be affecting any areas of land anytime soon, and that pretty much wraps up our tropical weather bulletin for tonight, guys.
Do you think the disturbance percent chance of impact this week?
Do we think the disturbance
Good
would
possibility.
represent-
I think it's a good possibility.
And do we think 2019 worldwide could be similar to 2017? Well, a lot of things happened in 2017 worldwide.
Well, 2017, we got to think. 2017 had a very active Atlantic, an average East Pack, a very quiet West Pack. So, probably not. I don't think. At
Oh,
least-
well.
Probably more active than that in the worldwide sense, but I don't know.
That finishes up our Tropical Weather Bulletin live for tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. We were here. I mean, when it comes down to it, there isn't really too much to talk about because none of the systems are affecting land or are particularly strong in any way, and 4W looks terrible right now, but there we go. Tropical Weather Bulletin Light would have gone out at the start of today's show, but there's an error in it, so it'll be coming out in about 10 or 20 minutes on the Force 13 Twitter account. Until then, we'll have regular updates across social media, Force 13 on Facebook and Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel, which you're probably watching us on right now. Good night from us and from the team. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. I imagine with a normal Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night. We just went live really because we thought we would, and it came right off the back of the Astronomy Hour, which was really good as well. You can catch up with that, by the way. It's going to be archived on our Space channel. Did you know that existed, by the way? Our Space channel,
No.
which I think you can find through our channel page, hopefully. Just have a look on there and look at all the associated channels, and if you like any of them, Give them some support as well. We all need it. See you soon. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Boy.